Hey guys, it's Steph. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today I'm going to show you how to recreate this drinking game that I made in the beginning of quarantine. It's a coronavirus themed drinking game. You essentially just click the card and it's got some funny questions on the back. You can Zoom your friends and play this while maintaining social distancing. And it has a cool shuffle feature, so when you click play again, you don't have to play in the same order. That is something that could be helpful for a ton of different card games. So make sure you like and subscribe to my channel and enjoy this video. If you want to play the full version of this game, you can do so at cheers.colorblind.design. I'm going to link it in the description below, so enjoy. Alright, so I already created a blank project for us to get started. And the first thing I want to do is give the entire screen a really dark background. So I'm going to say width full, height screen, flex column, item center, and justify center. Then I will give this div a background darkest. Within that, we want our header. It's going to say the quarantine crew gets lit. And then underneath that, we will say, warning, this game is pretty effing fun. And then below that, we will say, click the card to change it. So now let's style these. I'm going to give this top header text white, text 5XL, font bold. And let's say margin bottom 2. This next one I'm going to say text gray 500, margin bottom 12. And then down here, I'm going to say text small, text teal 400. And let's see how that looks. It's looking good. I spelled center wrong here for item center, so that should fix it. And then let's make this gray 500 to gray 400. Better. As much as I like making up words, I think we should change poretti to pretty. And now we can move on to creating the actual card. I'm going to create it similar to a real playing card where it has two faces, a front and a back, and the back is where we're going to have our content. So I want to give it that 3D effect of flipping, and I'm going to do that using normal CSS just because Tailwind doesn't have that functionality yet. So the way I'm going to do this is just get my HTML and Tailwind styling in place, and then I'll put the IDs and classes that I'll be using and go in and fill the CSS in after. This first div, I'm not going to give it any Tailwind styling. I'll just give it an ID. And it's going to be F1 container. This next div will have an ID again. This time it's going to be F1 card. And we'll give some styling here. Let's say shadow medium. And then I want it to have a height and width similar to an actual playing card, so I'm going to go in and do some inline CSS. I'll say width 320 pixels and height 440. So now this div is going to start the actual front of the card. So I'm going to give it the class face, which I'm going to fill in later with some normal CSS. We'll say background white, padding 2, and rounded large. Then we want another div within that. I'm going to give this one padding Y2, background black, height full. Let's say flex column, item center, and rounded large. So now we need the actual content of the front of the card. So I'm going to say H1. This is going to say cheers. Let's say text yellow 400. Text 6XL. Padding bottom 2. Uppercase. And let's do font semi-bold. Then below that, I'm going to create a div that's really just going to act as a line or like a separator. So let's say height is just 1 with full background white and margin bottom 3. Oops, all of this should be within a class. So next I'm going to put an image in. I already have it saved in my public folder. It's called cheers.png. So this image is a black image. So let's do some inline CSS just to invert the colors. I'm going to say filter, brightness 0, invert 1. And so now it'll make that black image white. Then if we go back to the class, let's give it a height of 56. And I don't want it to be bright white, so I'm going to say opacity 50. That way it's a little dimmer. And lastly, let's put a little warning in that just says drink responsibly. For this, I'll say text is extra small, text yellow 400, and margin top, let's try 8. So that's the front of the card. Now we can move on to the back of the card, which we are going to create this card so when you hover, it flips over. And then if you click the back of the card, it'll switch to a new card. So let's make this a button. So let's say width full, height full. It's a button, so let's say focus, outline, none. I'm going to put these in the front. I'm giving it 2 classes. It's going to be back and face, which these will be filled in down in our CSS. Say background is white. We're going to have to make it absolute. So let's say inset 0 and z index 40. I'm going to say flex call, and rounded large. So within this button, we're going to have the actual question. So eventually we'll add a dictionary, but for right now I'm just going to put question as a placeholder. Let's say text center, text 2XL, and font semi-bold. Then we'll do just a hashtag at the bottom. I'll say quarantine ain't shit. Font semi-bold and margin top auto. All right, so now that we've got the front and back of our card in place, let's go down here and get our CSS. So first we had this ID F1 container. So all we have to say here is perspective 1000. Then we have F1 card, which was also an ID. Here we're going to say transform style preserve 3D. Okay, then let's say transition all 1 second linear. Next, we're just going to say F1 container on hover F1 card, and we'll say transform, rotate in the Y direction 180 degrees. Okay, so next we have the class face, and we're just going to say back face, visibility, and it's hidden. Oops, second D. And lastly, face back. Once again, rotate 180. So transform, rotate in the Y direction 180 degrees. All right, here I made a mistake. The F1 container and hover should not have a space. And let's check it out. And awesome, it works. So I think I should add some padding to this button. Let's try padding 6. Awesome. So now once we fill in the question, this will display the question, and when we click it, it'll switch to the next. So the very last thing I want to do style-wise is add some margin here. Let's say margin bottom 8. Okay, so to save time, I went in and created our dictionary already. I called it deck, and I gave each question a category and a question. So right now, we're really only concerned with this question, which is going to be displayed on the back of the card, and the category will come in a little bit. So to start off, let's just say step is 0 and category is normal. And again, I'll explain the category in a bit. And let's go up to our card. So we want this card to display our information in our dictionary deck. And we're going to only display one at a time, so we only want one question being shown at a time. And when we click it, we want to change the step. So what I'm going to do is say v4 qi in deck. And then we only want to display one at a time, so we'll say v if step is equal to I. Then down here at the button, let's say at click, step is equal to step plus 1. And then here where we had question, let's just change that to q.question. So now the card is going to display the question in the dictionary only one at a time. When we click the card, it'll add one to the step and change the question that we see. So let's make sure it worked. It's displaying our question. We click it, and it shows a new question. So now the issue is, once they get through the entire deck of cards, it's just going to disappear, and it doesn't really give them an option to do anything unless they reload the page. But then the cards are going to go through in the exact same order they just did. So what we want to do is put an end screen in that gives them the option to play again, and if they click play again, we want the cards to shuffle. So outside of the outermost div housing our card, let's create another div. We'll say flex column, item center, justify center. I'm going to give it the same height and width as our card, just so everything stays in place. Then within it, I'll have a little blurb saying, "You finished the game." Let's say text large, font semi-bold, and text white. Below that, I'm going to put a little GIF I found. It's like a rainbow virus, so I'll say virus.gif. I'm going to give this image margin Y 6, and then below that we'll have our button. This button is going to say play again. Let's say width 56, padding 4, background yellow 300 on hover, background yellow 400, font semi-bold, and focus outline none. Okay. Now, we only want this to show when they've gone through every single question. So we are going to say v if step is equal to deck.length. So now if we go through the entire length of our dictionary deck, it will show our end screen. And there we have it. So now we just need to add the functionality to click this, shuffle the deck, and play again. All right, so let's create our methods section. And we're going to create a method called shuffle. And we'll have a for loop. So let's say for let I equal this.deck.length -1, and then I greater than 0, and then I minus. We'll say const j is equal to math.floor math.random times I plus 1. Then we'll say this.deck j this.deck I. Let's flop those. Equals this.deck j this.deck I. All right. Then we'll have to say mounted, and we'll just say this.shuffle. I'm spelling everything wrong. Shuffle. Then if we go up to our button, let's say @click, and we're just going to call that method shuffle. And let's set step back to 1. So if we go ahead and test it out, say play again, and it's shuffled and letting us play again. So now we have a fully functioning game, and when you complete the entire deck, you can shuffle the cards and play again. So there's one last thing I want to do to finish this game off. If you remember, down in our deck dictionary, I added a category, and almost every single card's category is normal, but a couple of them have the category virus. So since this is a coronavirus-themed quarantine game, I thought it would be fun just to put virus cards in there related to the coronavirus. So if we go back up to the back of our card, which is the button, let's go ahead and give a background image to the back side of the card. Now I'm going to be using some JavaScript, so got to use the correct Vue syntax here. And I'm going to say if q.category is virus, then let's show this background image. And I'm just going to use that virus GIF we used before. Otherwise, nothing. And then let's go down to class and say background contain, background center, and background no repeat. All right, let's take a look. So now if we get a virus card, we've got this cool little virus background. And that's our game. I hope you guys enjoyed that video. If you did, make sure you like and subscribe to my channel to get more content just like this. And again, if you want to play the full version of this drinking game, I linked it in the description below, but it's just at cheers.colorblind.design.